Hello and welcome to the truth behind the TikTok time traveler. I know what many of my fans may be thinking. A video about TikTok? This video is pretty much as far outside my wheelhouse as I'd like to go, but the subject involves a topic I do cover, which is different dimensions. Allegedly. Recently I became aware of a story emerging about an individual who claims to be lost in some sort of alternate reality. Normally when it comes to social media stories, I try to avoid them at all cost. However, this one was fairly different. After reviewing many videos covering this topic, the more I began to realize that even the most critical of viewers were not sure if this was real or some type of hoax. This led me down the rabbit hole where I discovered some major issues, or should I say flaws, within what was being presented. So today, I want to take you on a journey to discover if there really is people on TikTok that are capable of relaying information across different universes. Spoiler alert, not likely. People claiming to be time travelers are not a new thing, and this phenomenon has been making its rounds since the early 1900s, and probably a lot earlier than that. Yet these claims continue to this day. The most famous of these people, and often spoke about within the paranormal sectors, is John Titor. This story emerged in 2000, and while the information was fascinating, it did eventually fall in similar ways to all other claims, with it being a hoax. More recently, in 2018, a man simply known as Noah claimed to be from the year 2030, but traveled as far as 2120. This man, who always hid his face, had many predictions, and provided video proof of his claims. Apparently this man even passed the lie detector test, but at the end of the journey, he finally came clean. After many of his predictions fell through, he revealed his face and stated that he was simply a guy who was unemployed, lived with his parents, and basically wanted to have a little fun. So the pattern came through again, where claims are made, people start believing them, then it is proven false, and we all return to our normal day. Now, in 2021, we have a new challenger emerging from the shadows who wants to take the time traveler crown. This would be a man simply known as Javier, with a TikTok account named Único Superviviente, or Lone Survivor. According to him, he apparently awoke in a hospital in Valencia, Spain, with no recollection of his past or how he got there in the first place. With his story, he had discovered that he was trapped in a different universe, where it currently was February 13th, 2027. What makes this weirder is the fact that this dimension appears to be devoid of other humans and even animals. Although it should be noted that even though there is no other life in the world, somehow the power grid stays online. With this premise, he takes his millions of viewers on journeys with him around many locations in Spain, where they are now abandoned ghost towns. Yes, apparently TikTok is capable of bridging the gap between dimensions. Who knew? Stranger yet, he claims that time works a little differently, or should I say conveniently for his story, where electronic devices seem affected by the time change, but everything else is not. In one clip, he is seen asking Google for the current date, and it comes back with February 13th, 2027, or some variation thereof. However, when prodded by viewers to go to a grocery store to show any product's expiration date, it has 2021 written on it. That information would be enough for my viewers as proof of it being a hoax. Yet, he doubles down and claims that somehow his reality is merged with ours, in that he can place an object, such as a keychain or painting, in a location, and later some of his followers actually are able to recover it. In later versions of his uploads, he shows that he had recovered a green folder from a hospital that states he was involuntarily part of an experiment called JESP8827. What this means is anyone's guess, but I have my suspicions. What really makes this story fascinating is the fact that he visits so many locations that should have a lot of people walking about, but there is never anyone found. Not only this, but there isn't any birds in the sky or on the ground, and he even once visited a zoo where all the pens were empty. Javier has uploaded many videos where he has visited locations that he shouldn't have access to, such as football stadiums, or soccer for us Americans. In one upload, he is even shown wandering about an empty school and later a police station. Many of his most daring locations are chosen by suggestions by his viewers, most of which are presented as a challenge for him to prove that his story is factual. So far, he has been able to provide enough proof to keep his loyal viewers involved in the storyline. Now, as of making this video, I have yet to find anyone really attempting to make sense of his claims, but I could have simply missed them. As such, I decided to take it upon myself to review the clips and see if I noticed anything that would go against his backstory. As a note, I do not utilize TikTok and don't have an account with them, so I strictly relied on videos that were available online. With this admission, I am sure I missed something, but from what I have seen, I currently have 2 pages of notes on things that I discovered that are, let's just call them irregularities. Starting off, from all the videos I have watched, Javier is rarely seen. The only times this happens is if it is a shot from him walking away, a reflection of him walking by a store window, in which he still is wearing a hood, or in a rare instance where he shows his head but is completely covered in what I would liken to a paintball mask. This immediately begs the question of why this is done, and more importantly, who is he hiding from? If he truly is alone in the world, why would he want to, or better yet need to, treat his identity with such secrecy? Is he hiding from the people who supposedly placed him in this experiment? This wouldn't make sense, since I am fairly certain that if they do exist, then they already know who he is. Maybe he is concerned about a virus of some sort. This would be fine if he hasn't shown videos where he had no issues eating french fries left out in a restaurant, and in many instances he is touching things with fingerless gloves. I understand doing what you need to do to survive, but those seem like pretty big risks, especially since stores are still stocked with packaged and canned foods. Speaking of stores, I find it really weird that even though this is supposed to be 2027, the businesses still appear to have the lines on the floor to keep people 6 feet apart, which we all see during our current virus outbreak. Maybe this goes with the idea that only certain things are involved in the paradox. Okay, with this I have to mention the real oddity. Within the lore, how is his reality aligned with ours? If this is time travel, I'm not aware of any theories that explain how actions in the future change things in the past. Normally, it is the exact opposite of this. I mean, how does placing one object by a lamppost in 2027 make it show up in 2021? Is this 2 separate realities where portions intermingle, or is it a different dimension on the same plane of existence? In that one world is 2021 and the other is parallel to it in 2027. This is enough to make anyone's brain hurt, so I will move on. There is an issue with the power still being on. While some may take for granted how power is actually delivered to places, many of us realize this isn't a magical phenomenon. Regardless of the source, whether it is hydroelectric, nuclear, wind turbine, natural gas, or even fossil fuels, they all typically require close monitoring by humans. This can involve many factors, such as monitoring the grids to simply keeping up with the maintenance. In looking up Valencia, Spain, I couldn't get exact figures, but it appears that much of the area utilizes nuclear power by way of the, and I couldn't get the exact pronunciation, Confrentes power plant? I am not an expert in this field, but from all sources I have looked up, if no humans were around, nuclear plants would start going down, in the best case scenario, within 3 months. That is, if everything is good. Being I am a construction worker who does frequently work in power plants for maintenance, I have rarely seen a plant where everything was in perfect working order. You frequently find that these plants are given a budget for fixing what is in need of replacement, but the moment that money amount is reached, all work stops and the plant carries on until the next outage budget is scheduled. In the trade, we commonly say we are just putting band-aids on things that should be completely replaced. Without people around to keep things in check, it is highly likely that our friend Javier should be literally in the dark by now. I have a lot to go through, so let's get into the irregularities that I saw. First and foremost, in many of the locations he visits, he makes no qualms with hiding the fact that he already has numerous keys to unlock the doors. This was seen at the stadium and the police station. I find it odd that he would manage to acquire all the keys needed to these locations. In fact, when he entered one of the stadium's locker rooms, he pretends to simply push the door open for the first time, but we clearly see the same keys he used at the police station hanging out of the lock in the door. We will return to the police station, but it is really weird that at each stadium he visits, from what I can gather it is 2 different ones, he always finds a set of brand new sportswear just randomly laying out for him. I also found it odd that when he went out into the field, he always stayed on the sidelines. From all the videos I saw, he never actually walked out to the middle. It makes me wonder if he had a deal that he could film there as long as he didn't disturb the field. I know in many sports, once a field is prepared for a game, they typically don't want anyone on the turf until the day of the event. I won't even mention the objects that appear to be drones above the field. I'm not a big sports fan, so it might be part of the stadium and used to record different angles of the games. Jumping back to the police station, it was really odd that he was allowed in, but really strange that one of the cars was already running and waiting for him to get in. I don't know how things work in other countries, but here in the US, either of those actions would be a sure way to find yourself in jail. His account simply states that he is a public figure. This leads me to believe that Javier is either very wealthy and has power and can get away with a lot, is a public official of some sort, or maybe is even a police officer himself. One thing I picked up on with looking at his videos is that frequently his most riskiest locations that he visits is suggested by his viewers. A common thread with this started to emerge where these suggestions were phrased as almost a bet. One would say, "I will give you $10,000 to go here," and this would then follow up with others giving different amounts, up to one claiming to give him $1 million. We all know these viewers probably don't have that kind of money, nor would he ever use for it if he is truly alone. Yet, these requests were frequently the locations he visited. It quickly made me wonder if Javier was actually working with a group of people to pull this off. This may be conspiracy theory Ben coming out, but I believe this to be the case. All the quote-unquote viewers who were finding the items he left behind and uploading those videos to the platform were working with him. It is possible that utilizing the bet phrase in a comment was an easy way to inconspicuously let him know that a certain location was clean to go to, where he would have few human interactions. Much like a secret passphrase to get into a club. One thing that really became obvious was that if a location wasn't locked, then all the doors were already ajar. Very weird. Probably the biggest supporter of this theory came by way of someone requesting he visit a Mercedes-Benz dealership and taking one of the cars. First, that would be a very specific request, but we'll let it slide. What is odd is that while in the store, he just randomly finds a key to one of the cars just lying out in the open on the corner of a desk that happens to have nothing else on it. Because, you know, dealerships just leave keys laying around in the open to their higher-end cars. Anyway, he stated that he kept clicking the button until he finally found the car that it went to. Is it inside the storeroom with all the other cars? Nope. It is sitting outside the store with virtually no other cars around it. Better yet, this expensive car is outside, in the weather, and the dealership thought it best to store it on the lot with the sunroof down. Then we get another cut, where he is taking the car for a spin, but now it is completely dark outside, and not very clear if it is actually the same car or not, due to it being nighttime. Interestingly, one location he visited was what he claimed to be an underground refuge in the middle of the city. As he went down the concrete stairs, it led to a labyrinth of passageways, all going in different directions. Fortunately for him, he made the exact turns he needed without hesitation, to lead to another green folder with a paper in it, just randomly laying in the passage. I couldn't discern what this paper said, but I am sure it was something about his involvement in the experiment that was going on. Lucky for him, he knew exactly where to find this information, especially with a location he apparently didn't know existed. Oh, in one restaurant he visited, it was clear that construction or remodeling may have been happening there. This is where he may have messed up the most, since you can hear a bang resound out of nowhere. He doesn't react to this, but does go back into the kitchen, and by how objects are laid out, you can tell people were just there, or out of shot, and were waiting to return to their work. All this information and irregularities aside, the major glaring issue that people bring up is, how is he taking videos with no one in the shot? This did puzzle me for a bit, and I came up with a few theories. It is possible that he is waiting for the right moment to take a video, or that he has been granted access to certain locations where he knows it will just be him. This idea was reinforced when some of his viewers pointed out that his videos of inside shots could be acquired later at night when less people were around. I thought the same thing, especially when he returned to the hospital. Obviously, hospitals are normally less crowded at night than the day. Mysteriously, in one shot he is shown wandering empty halls, and I found it odd that at one point he seemed fully intent on entering one of the rooms, but then jerked away suddenly. Is it possible that he saw someone inside and chose to avoid going in? Not to mention that he really didn't enter any areas in the hospital that would be deemed off limits. Although he has later provided many videos where he is in a public space in the daytime, and it is still devoid of humans. Even when he entered the zoo, no animals could be found. Is this proof of his claims? Maybe, maybe not. Speaking of the zoo, on a technical standpoint, it is possible that you could simply wait for animals to move out of shot to take the video. Also, I must mention that many of his uploads, from what I have seen, are not seamless. In one video he is filming one pen, and then the video cuts and he is in another location. This is also seen with the hospital, where the video of the outside is taken during the day, but then it cuts to him being inside. What are we not seeing in those cuts? All this aside, it only took me one search to find that software does exist where you can remove people and objects from video. Two of the most popular are Adobe After Effects using Content Aware, and also Mocha Pro is apparently even better at this process, but extremely expensive. The program has some impressive results, but all states it can take a long time to render. This is why I think waiting for the perfect shot was imperative. With this in mind, I did find it odd that when he was in this video clip, he kept the camera pointed to the side in an odd way, which told me he didn't really want to look down the road. I have seen where cars are more difficult to remove. Also, while we're on this clip, I want to point out that it looks like he missed removing a bit of contrail from a plane. It may simply be a cloud, but it looks odd to me. I also wanted to point out something odd in this clip. As he is walking down the alley, I noticed a weird reflection or glitch appear for a second on the corner of one of the buildings. I have seen a similar glitch in other videos showing off the capabilities of the software, but I could be mistaken and it might simply be a reflector. While I am 99.99% certain that this story is a work of fiction, I do still find the topic fascinating and interesting. It does provide a point of view of how the world would look without people. As such, I have to wonder if this series was created with more of an artistic appeal behind it. Is it an expression of how the world is currently? Is it a commentary on social media is removing all face-to-face human interactions? Is it simply an ad for editing software? Or am I simply giving it more credit than I should? It is worth mentioning that, like our history with time traveler claims, others are now jumping on board with the idea. I saw a report from another TikTok user from Mexico who goes by the name of Solo Kellen is producing a similar set of videos. Not to be outdone, but there is a user going by the title of Time Traveler 2582 who claims to be from the future and is out there making very outlandish claims. At the end of the day, I harbor no ill will towards any of these people, and I wish them well in their endeavors. I highly doubt any of them are making this content with malicious purposes in mind. I enjoy a good paranormal story, but for the moment, in my mind, this is exactly what this is. A story. As I end this, I hope you enjoyed this little departure from our normal topics. I'm curious what you think about the story. Do you think it is real, or is the whole thing made up? As a heads up, this isn't going to be a continuing topic that my channel will be looking at. I simply found the story interesting and thought you would enjoy the investigation. I also wanted to mention that in last week's video, I couldn't recall who requested that we look into whales. After reading my comments, I found that a viewer named Carl Davis was one who suggested it. So thank you for that. Also, within the comment section, one state received so many votes that it can be officially said that our next Cryptid by State will be Louisiana. As promised, the second place winner, which is North Carolina, will be the following month. However, I am still asking that you continue to vote for the state you would like to see after those two. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you share my videos with some you know who may be interested in this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.